Welcome to my Pirkei Avot class, and we're going to be talking today about Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Tarfon, and this is Mishnah Tesvav, number 15 in Perek Beis of the second chapter in Pirkei Avot. Rabbi Tarfon, actually the name Tarfon is not a name that you find in Tanakh. It's not a name which you find in Torah. It's a Greek word, Tryphon. In fact, there was a very famous grammarian who lived in Alexandria. His name was Tryphon. You know what the word Tryphon means in Greek? It means soft, it means kind, it means pleasant. And Rabbi Tarfon absolutely fitted his name. I can't tell you if it was his real name or if it was his nickname, but he was a true Tryphon. He was the kindest, nicest person you can possibly imagine. He came from a family of Kohanim, of priests. And in fact, in any situation where the halacha needs to be decided and it involves something to do with Kohanim, he always decides in favor of the Kohanim because he feels that the Kohanim have to play a central role in the ritual observance of Judaism, and he felt the need to speak up on behalf of the priestly class. Of course, by the time he was active, which is in the late Second Temple period, during the time of the destruction, and after the destruction, he was a contemporary of Rabban Gamliel, Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Akiva. And of course, you know, he's mentioned in the Haggadah. He is one of those five who was Mesubim b'Bnei Barak, and they spent the whole night talking about Yetzias Mitzrayim. Rabbi Tarfon, he lived in Lud, probably. Or maybe he lived in Yavne, we're not quite sure where he lived. But in every situation, despite the fact that he lived in this rabbinic period, and that he lived in a period where the priestly class was no longer in the primary position of Jewish life. Nevertheless, he felt the need to speak up on their behalf and to articulate a view which took the priestly class obligation into consideration. You know, there's a famous story that there was great poverty in Eretz Yisrael, and there was an obligation that people had to give truma. But you know, the truma can only be eaten by the Kohanim. In those days, there was no restriction of marrying more than one wife. So Rabbi Tarfon realized there's so many people who are starving. So he married, listen to this, 300 wives so that they could all eat teruma. Because once they are the wives of Kohanim, even if they come from a non-Kohen family, they can eat teruma. I can't tell you what happened once the famine was over, whether he divorced them all. That isn't recorded, but he married 300 wives because he wanted to make sure that there was no starvation, despite the fact that there was a famine at the time, because Kohanim had food because they needed to eat the teruma, but they couldn't eat all the teruma. He married 300 wives. He was a fantastic person, somebody whose opinion is quoted across the Talmud, and we see mentioned in the Medrash as well. He always, for example, he began his drashas, he always began with a halachic question. Usually, people gave a halachic speech, a speech about halakha, Jewish law. They would begin with drush, with some interesting anecdote or portion of drush, but he didn't. He did the opposite. He would give a drasha, and he would always start it with a halachic, a question that he felt the audience should consider before he would launch into his homiletic speech. Rabbi Tarfon here is going to speak about the importance of focusing on the study of Torah. That's his contribution to Pirkei Avot. Listen carefully, the two mishnas, Mishnah Tesvav and Mishnah Tezayin in Perek Beis of Pirkei Avot. He begins by saying, Rabbi Tarfon Omer, Hayoim kotzer v'hamalocha meruba. The day is short, and that which needs to be done is very time-consuming. It will take a long time. It's all-consuming. He's not talking, of course, about each individual day being short, because, yes, of course, days are short in the winter, but in the summer, they're long. He's talking about your life. Your life is of a limited span. You're born, and it's a countdown to when you are going to die. That's the fact, and we don't know when that's going to happen, but we know that it's not going to be much longer than your contemporaries. It may even be shorter. So he says, Hayoim kotzer. Your time is short. You need to remember every day when you wake up in the morning, my time is short. What am I going to accomplish today? And you mustn't forget, B'hamalocha meruba. that which you have to do is very time consuming. It could take a long time. If you're going to say to yourself, not true. I mean, the work that I do, I'm not sure what your job is or what your function is in life. I could finish my job at, 10 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock, 12 noon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I've got the rest of the day free. He's not talking about that. He's talking about the study of Torah. Your spiritual growth, that which you need to do in order to fulfill your function, to discharge your duty before God, hamalacha meruba. There's a lot for you to do. There's always something more for you to learn. There's always something more for you to know. There's always something for you to do in order to prepare yourself even more for your relationship with God. So you bring you closer to God. But the Zman is kotzer. You have a limited time. As I said, it's a stopwatch. It's a clock. And the seconds are ticking. So Rabbi Tarfon says, don't waste your life away. Don't allow your life to slip through your fingers, and just do the things that you need to do and spend the rest of the time in leisure activities. Okay, occasionally I go to a shir, I listen to a shir, and I learn a bit of Torah. I heard the drosha from the rabbi on Shabbos, and I once went to yeshiva or to seminary, and I know enough that all that I need. No. Torah is a daily obligation. It's a duty on every single person who's involved in their spiritual growth to make sure that they dedicate time in the limited time that you have, because melacha meruba, because there is much to do. And he says this in the nicest possible way, because of course he was Trifon, right? He was a kind-hearted, soft person, delicate. That's what the word means. He was a delicate person. He didn't want to say things in a rough way. So he's not speaking directly, he's speaking indirectly, but he's making a very important point. Human nature is lazy. We do what we have to do, and then we by the way, human nature is animal nature. The fact is that an animal will only do that which it needs to do in order to eat and in order to function in life. And if you see the lions lazing about on the prairie and not chasing after antelope, it's because they ate a nice meal and they don't need to do anything more. Their day is done, so they can lie on the prairie and bask in the sun. But you're a human being. Doesn't matter what you do, there's always something more to do. There's charity work that you can be involved in. There's activities that you can do that can enhance the lives of others and indeed your own life. There's always something to know, another project, another book that you haven't read, another sefer, another element of your Jewish, of the whole array of Jewish knowledge that could be yours that you haven't yet started. So your moment is whenever you have so-called a spare moment. And your nature is, I can't now, I'm tired, I've got something else to do, I've done enough, I don't need to do more. And that's what he's saying. V'apoyalim atzelim. The workers are lazy. In other words, those who have to do what we know we need to do are not naturally inclined to do it. It's not something they're going to be chasing after unless they make a conscious effort. You have to be so disciplined in your life to know that that's what you have to do even when you don't have to do it. There's so many things that you don't have to do, because the things that you need to do in order to earn a living are the things that you need to do. The things that you need to do in order to cook a meal or to clean it away or to make your bed or to clean your laundry, those are things that you need to do. And if you don't do them, then they won't get done. But there's many things that you don't need to do. And if you didn't do them, no one would know. No one would be any the wiser. And it wouldn't make a huge difference in a practical sense, in a material sense, to your life. If you never studied a page of Talmud, no one would ever know. It wouldn't make a big difference. If you don't mix in a group of people who study Talmud, they're never going to ask you, what does the Talmud say about this? And if you don't know every aspect of this week's Parsha, nobody's going to hold you to account. Therefore, the natural inclination of a human being, and in that way they are inclined towards their animal side as opposed towards their spiritual, their neshama side, is v'hapoyalim atzelim. We're not going to do things that we don't necessarily need to do in order to accomplish the things that we need to accomplish in life. But if you want to be a better person, self-improvement, you will be disciplined to know that when I have a spare minute, I'm going to learn a Mishnah. When I have a spare half hour, I'm going to listen to a shir. When I have a spare couple of hours, I'm going to read a book that's going to better inform me about who I am and where I need to be as a person. I am going to be the best that I can be with my intellectual abilities. I'm going to make sure that I strive for the highest ideal, for the highest level of what I could be. That is what Rabbi Tarfon is saying. V'asocha harbe. And the benefits are huge. Don't ever imagine that the benefits are limited. So they may be limited in a material sense. It's not going to enable you to put more money into your bank account necessarily. It's not going to enable you to be more successful in life. Not necessarily. It could be, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about as a person, you will be enriched. As a spiritual being, you will be a better person. And of course, the schar with God, which is la'osid lovai, which we're going to talk about in the next Mishnah, is immeasurable. It's something that can't even be described or defined. V'asocha harbe uvalabayis doichek. And you should know that the balabais, there's two interpretations of this. Either the balabais being Hashem, pushing you to do it. He is urging you, making sure that you do it and do that which you need to do in order to be the better person that you can be. That's one interpretation of this phrase in the Mishnah. Another interpretation is ubalabais doichek, the balabais being you, or maybe the Yetzer Hara, which is referred to in rabbinic literature as the balabais, because he has it has ultimate control of the human condition, the Yetzer Hara, the inclination that draws you away from spiritual yearning. Doichek pushes you away. It somehow removes from you the desire to be a better spiritual being. So therefore, Rabbi Tarfon is saying, strive to be a better person, recognize that it's not something that you are naturally inclined to do or necessarily that you can do easily, but the benefits are huge, and that's what God wants from you, even if there's a side of you that doesn't want to be that at all. And the next Mishnah continues. Rabbi Tarfon, I guess, sensing that some of us may feel downhearted, may feel put off by this huge expectation that is put on us to do something which is it's beyond the realms of an easy life. He knows that we're going to be somewhat upset that we cannot achieve these great heights. So Rabbi Tarfon wants to pacify us, and he does so with this next Mishnah. Hu haya omer. This is what Rabbi Tarfon said. Lo alecha hamalocha ligmor. Not every single person has the capability of finishing Shas. And you may start the Daf Yomi Shir with Brachos and Shabbos, and you get to Eruvin, you get to Psochim, and it's difficult to devote that time. I can't finish Shas. I finished a Masechta, okay, so I've done enough. And you may think to yourself, I don't need to learn any more Gemara, because I can't finish the whole Daf Yomi cycle. What nonsense. You don't have to do it according to that measure. You can learn Gemara, dip in and out of it. You can go to the shir when you can go to the shir. And when you can't go to the shir, you don't go to the shir. And you don't have to finish the whole of Shas. Finish one Masechta, finish one Perek, do it properly. Or on another level, you may think to yourself, whatever I'm going to know, there's always going to be people who know it better than me, who are better and greater scholars than I could ever be. I'm never going to be able to go through a piece from Reb Chaim Soloveitchik on the Rambam and be able to understand it in all its depth and breadth. I'm just never going to be that person. I'm not going to be able to learn through the K'tzos HaChoshen on the Gemara. I'm not going to be able to understand the depth of his various chakiras, where he projects different ideas and different concepts for us to consider in trying to decide the halacha, the K'tzos HaChoshen, which is on Choshen Mishpat. It's an incredible sefer, but not everybody is suited to that level of depth in their study. And you may think to yourself, then why bother starting? If I'm never going to be able to learn a K'tzos, if I'm never ever going to be able to learn a Reb Chaim, if I'm never going to be able to finish Shas, if I'm never going to know everything that I could know about this particular subject, what's the point of starting? You know, if I ever need to know something, I can Google it, and therefore I don't need to read the book. I don't need to go there. I don't need to attend the shiurim or listen to the shiurim. I don't need to try and learn it myself. It's not possible for me to finish it. Therefore, I won't even bother starting, says Rabbi Tarfon. Never have that attitude. It's the wrong attitude to have. Your aspiration is, or should be, I want to do as much as I can. I want to get as much knowledge and acquire as much knowledge and depth as I can that's possible for me in the circumstances of my life, whatever it is that I'm going through. Loi alecha hamalacha ligmar. It may not be possible for you to finish it, but that's absolutely fine. That's totally fine. Do whatever you can. Become the level of scholar and have the level of knowledge that you can, that makes you who you are, the best that you can be. And on that basis, you have no right to say, I'm not going to do any of it because I can't do all of it. You have no right to say that. God put you on this earth so that you can be the best person that you can be, at the best level that you can achieve. That's your duty. Your duty is not to be Reb Chaim Soloveitchik or the author of the K'tzos HaChoshen or somebody necessarily who's finished Shas because they've been through 4 cycles of Daf Yomi. It may not be you. You may be somebody else. And that expectation is on you. You can't just say, I'm free of it all. I'm not going to bother doing any of it because I can't do all of it. That's not your right to say. And if you've learned a lot of Torah, however much a lot of Torah is for you, a lot of Torah for you may be, in the circumstances you find yourself in, an hour a day. It may be 5 hours a day. It may be all day. It makes no difference. Whatever Torah harbe is for you, you get a lot of reward. In other words, the benefit will be exponentially greater because of the effort that you've put in to do as much as you can. You will receive the benefit of that knowledge. And, you could read an article which is 1,000 words, or you could read like an Atlantic magazine article which is 10,000 words. They're both on the same subject. Well, the 1,000-word article will give you some knowledge, and the Atlantic magazine article will give you much more knowledge. But of course, if you've read the Atlantic magazine article, you're going to know much more. It's Sacha Harbe. So you will get that benefit. But that doesn't mean you're not going to get the benefit if all you can do is read an article for 10 minutes. In other words, I'm using that just as an analogy. If you can learn one Mishnah a day, that for you is Torah Harbe, because that's all you can learn, and you've managed to fit it in. There's plenty of people in the world, in fact, the vast majority of people in this world, who don't learn a Mishnah a day. And the vast majority of people in this world don't dedicate any time to Torah. As long as you know you're doing the best you can, even if you're not going to be able to finish all the Mishnais and all the Gemaras and all the Mefarshim, but you're doing the most that you can, then you're going to get Socha Harbe. Then you're going to get the full benefit, because you're still going to know much more than a person who didn't learn any Mishnais or any Gemara or inform themselves at all or devote themselves to spiritual growth. You're a person who's done more and as much as you can. You had no right, libotel mimena. That's what Rabbi Tarfon says, and you knew that. You did whatever you could, therefore you're going to benefit from Sacha Harbe, from great merit and great reward. And you should know something. Don't ever imagine that some people say, I learned something and it doesn't stay in my head. I don't remember it a week later. Who knows? Maybe if you learn it again, or if you learn it in half a year, that's happened to me, by the way. I think I've forgotten something, and then a year later I look at a piece of material, I learn a Dvar Torah, I say, I've learned that before. I'm just reminding myself of it. Because it's there, it's somewhere there in my brain, deep embedded in my brain, I have this information. And I may not be able to find it immediately if I'm looking for it in the filing cabinet. But it's there, right? Because you know why? Says Rabbi Tarfon, that which you put in, Hashem will make sure that you retain it at some level, and you will benefit from it. At some level, it's improved you as a person. At some level, the fact that you've devoted yourself to spiritual growth has made you a better person. As long as you're doing it for the right motivations, and you're doing the best you can, God will do the rest. God will carry you the rest of the way. V'da, matan schoren shel tzadikim la'osid lovai. The righteous don't get the benefits of what they do in terms of spiritual growth in this world. You may see somebody who never studies, who's got no connection with Torah, who's not the best Jew, and they're doing really well. They have great life. They have everything that they need. And you're struggling, but you study Torah and you think to yourself, well, 1 second, Rabbi Tarfon said, I'm going to get schar for the fact that I've studied Torah. Says Rabbi Tarfon, don't be mistaken. We're not talking about the type of schar that you can measure by material measurements. That's not what we're talking about at all. V'da, you should know. Matan schoran shel tzadikim le'osid lovai. The ultimate reward, the ultimate benefit that your neshama receives by devoting yourself to spiritual growth, by a greater connection to God. The ultimate reward is in the ultimate place, which is in heaven. After 120, when you're standing there before the Kisei HaKavod, before God's almighty throne, and He discusses with you personally that which you've done in your life, that's when all the benefit of that which you've devoted time, energy, effort, and resources to being a better human being for God, that's when everything will come cascading down on you. You will benefit from it in the best possible way. Says Rabbi Tarfon, as a person you should recognize that you are going to withdraw from anything which seems to be a spiritual aspiration. You'll maybe pay lip service to it. You may even spend a bit of time doing it, but your natural inclination is not in that direction. But make sure that you always devote as much time as you can. Be disciplined about who you are and about the fact that you were put here on this earth to be a better spiritual human being, not a better animal human being. And that's what you can do, and that's what you can achieve, and that's what Rabbi Tarfon wants from us, and that's the message he gives us and delivers for us here in Pirkei Avot in these two mishnas, Perek Beis, Mishnah Tes Vav and Mishnah Tes Zayin. Thank you.